Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Enmity Podcast. This is going to be our Star Wars in the SWTOR universe. Do they match up? And what we think maybe BioWare could do better to match it up, or if they're doing a great job, we'll talk about it. Tonight, we have me, Raging Rondo, along with Big, and the other cast members were either sick or working, so we're just going to keep moving along with what we got. So Big, you've been playing this game for we all have for about 2 years now. Do you think that they've done a good job to incorporate a lot of what the Star Wars values, maybe values is the wrong word, but into what Star Wars: The Old Republic is?
I think, especially in the beginning, I think they really tried to pay close attention to detail, and when they made it so certain classes can only wear certain types of looks, and you were kind of fixed to certain looks. So with the adaptive gear, I think they've kind of gone away with it a little bit as far as trying to stick to lore and sticking to the exact look of what Star Wars would be.
Right. And there's other things that I could agree with you on that. I know that a bounty hunter has always been able to wear any sort of armor. So that sort of, I think what they did with that was to make sure that everybody was sort of allowed to look the way they want. So that if you are, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the original light armors just weren't that cool looking. And if you
Oh
were,
yeah, well they had the luxury of actually adaptive armor or the social armor only basically fitting being light armor, so that was one thing that they had some crappy looks. They were at least able to benefit from the social gear before they actually fixed it and changed it to adaptive gear, so it didn't matter which armor type that you had.
yeah, and so, but I think one of the things to say is, well, maybe some of the light armor is crappy, but so on that end, it's nice that we are able to change. So I'm not going to be too picky, seeing as I have literally 5 characters full of just different looks, because I guess I'm a diva in that way. I guess I can't get too picky about that, um, about the fact that maybe the armor is getting a little mix and match. I think originally I was a bounty hunter running around looking like a Jedi sage, anyways. Or like I just did not care at the time. I liked the look, so I found a couple armor pieces, and maybe it looked like a bounty hunter wearing a kilt for a long time. And I'm not saying that my fashion sense is amazing, but I think in that area, I've always liked the fact that being a bounty hunter, I could just wear whatever I want. So on that aspect, I think that's something that they had to do to appeal to a multiple or a larger audience, because not everybody's going to play it just because, like, I am a Jedi, but I want to look like a bounty hunter, and you see a lot of people doing that nowadays, especially with free to play and multiple people playing this who might not be exactly Star Wars fans. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think it was just something that they had to do to appeal to a larger audience?
Well, I think it was more of they have this great flexible customization system that you can change out your armor, your gloves, your boots, and everything. So, and they had all these great armor sets, and I think they, even though in the beginning they wanted to restrict people to a certain look, I think once those people had left and some new people came in, they said let's people choose and let them look what how they want to. It was nice when they had the ability to start crafting some of the end game gear. Then you can kind of match classes where an agent or a scoundrel could wear like a sentinel's or a marauder's gear, since they both wear medium armor. And then same thing for my bounty hunter. I used to like wearing some of the jug side or the imperial side of gear as well, just because it generally had some like spikes off of it. So mixing that with some of the sets gave some good unique looks.
Right. And I think that the armor is just, that's what it's going to be. Everybody wants to be able to wear certain things. One thing that I think we talked about though with the armor set is that, and I don't know if we've mentioned it on previous casts. I think we have that this whole no, the fact that everybody can wear certain armor sets is one thing, but this whole area that they're going with the new armor, I think, is a little bit disturbing. I'm not. Maybe I'm speaking for people, but I know that for who I've people I have talked to about this subject, it seems like they're going for a very Tron sort of look, not a Star Wars look. And how do you feel about that? I mean, do you think that, I mean, to me, I feel that this is something that when I think of playing a Star Wars game, I don't imagine a lot of shiny armors with bright lights running around the place. I mean, it just doesn't seem very productive if you're trying to be stealthy as an operative.
I can see where you're going there. I mean, they kind of have the I don't know if you call it luxury, but the benefit of building gear for a time frame that doesn't exist, so they can technically get away with that. But you know, doing some silly or some crazy stuff because technically, you know, again, it's around a time frame that doesn't exist. It's like thinking about like 70s and the bell bottoms and all the crazy, you know, beads and just fancy, well, yeah, glitter or just I can't think of the word for it, but like rhinestone, that type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know, you could have people trying to make a fashion statement, and whether you choose to wear that on your agent and trying to be stealthy is, you know, up to you if you technically want to role play it or not. But I mean, they I think with that they were just trying to catering to certain people that may not necessarily care about the whole Star Wars look, and you know, with that new Marauder gear, we basically have spikes coming off your shoulder, but it shows your chest and your, you know, your midsection for the you know, if you want that. So you know, you got some big jug going around with his buff muscles showing. So again, I think some of that. And on the reverse side, you have some like slutty type outfits or some, you know, that type of stuff. Again, I think they're just trying to cater to some of the general needs and just kind of throwing the lore out of the way there. But I mean, they are throwing in some actual lore gear as well. Some, you know, the Mandalorian gear and some of the other ones that I'm not too familiar with. The
Right. Like
what some of the new lore gear they're
the twins from the comic books, post KOTOR sort of stuff.
yeah, like the Grab Dragon set and a few other ones like that.
Yeah. And you know, even I'm not trying to like really get upset, you know, or anything like that. I just think that when you look at these sort of armors, um, I don't feel like if I was on a battlefield, whether I was a bounty hunter, whether I was a Jedi, whether, you know, I was an operative, I'd want to be um, shiny, or not shiny, but have lights on my armor. And so so in that aspect, I think that, you know, other games don't put like bright lights on their armor. I think they were trying to be like, oh, well, this is an advanced culture. They would have lights on their armor, but nowhere in the Star Wars universe that I can look at, you know, do I see bright, shiny lights. Then I guess people can come back at me as I'm talking. I'm sort of playing the devil's advocate, you know. But the Jedi's lightsabers are bright and shiny. So, um, I think what I'm trying to
What about
say,
Darth Vader?
well, he was in all black.
We had the lights on his chest, the
But that was
flashing
keeping
lights.
him alive. You can't,
I know.
man, look at
I
me
know it
go
was a stretch.
bringing up Darth Vader, you know. I'm just yeah, yeah, okay, I could see that, you know, but I mean, what are we talking? We're talking like full body. Well, I guess with Vader, it's like chest shot, shoot right here. That'll take out. That's pretty much, you know, where they teach you in the military to shoot right there, shoot for the chest. That's a good little bullseye, I guess.
Well, the reason why I was like, kind of bringing up Vader is I actually do that on my my bounty hunter that I use as my on a cyborg race. So you know I have his like cyborg eye, and so I actually use some chest pieces and like belt pieces that actually have some flashing lights on there. You know, kind of to get that Vader type look, not with a cape or anything, but just getting that. You know, I'm part cyborg, so I need some blinking lights to keep me alive.
Right.
So I mean, that type of aspect, especially with the whole new cyborg gear, the series cyborg gear that they've been releasing. So, technically you might need those blinking lights to keep you alive.
All right. Well, if you want to put on cyborg gear, then I'm on. I guess I concede on that end that you're right about that. So, well, let's talk about it. We sort of hit the point on gear. Um, Now, here's another thing that I sort of brought up where I don't feel like the current state of the Imperial fleet or the Republic fleet sort of plays to the Star Wars universe sort of thing. I think that being up on the fleet actually feels a little bit more Star Trekky to me. How do because like you're part of the fleet that's going around and trying to they were peaceful. I'm not a Star Trek person, so I guess they're like peaceful envoys that go around, but they end up doing warlike stuff. I guess that's what Star Trek is, something like that. Anyways, but I do remember in some of the later, so you had what the original Star Trek, you had the next Star Trek, whatever they wanted to call that one, and then they had this one that revolved around like this fleet sort of area where they were all on the fleet, um, and that's kind of what the fleets feel like to me.
No, I can definitely see where you're going there. I mean, nowhere in them really is lower as they're kind of a central, fleet spot. Because generally, if you're doing some shady business as a, spy, an imperial agent, or a bounty hunter, you're not generally wanting to, hang around the Imperials too much. So I could definitely see the fleet kind of being this weird setup, and I've never really felt, kind of at home on the fleet when you're on the like Dromancos and some of those starter planets. That kind of feels more of like, right, kind of where you should be.
Or even if you
You,
think about it, there's like if I'm a bounty hunter, and obviously I'm getting into a little bit more sort of what do you call it? Role playing, sort of a role playing thing. When I say if I was a bounty hunter, I wouldn't be hanging out on the fleet all the time. I would come when they needed me.
well, yeah, and that's not necessarily role playing. That's just kind of sticking along with lore itself. So I mean, everyone just kind of hanging out on one central fleet. I mean, kind of like I said, there's not really any evidence in the or record of that technically in any of the books. So I mean, generally it's at, a bar or a certain city where most of the people gather and do their type of stuff. So I,
Right.
mean, I think just the fleet was more about load times possibly, and
Yeah, and
not
even
giving
when,
people lag.
Luke Skywalker is traveling around the universe trying to find say some shady customer who's doing something wrong. It wasn't on some giant fleet out in the middle of nowhere. It was legitimately on a planet where that suspect was known to frequent on some, say, landing area out there in the middle of maybe not so much out in the middle of nowhere, but kind of a meeting place, a cantina, where shady happenings happen, and that's where he would go. It wouldn't be on like this giant fleet. I mean, that's what holoterminals are for. Being on the
Yeah, I
fleet
mean,
feels like there's no downtime to the war. And one of the things that you see in most Star Wars extended universe books is there's a downtime. You know, they find time to meet up with the family. Obviously I'm reaching here a little bit, but there's just no downtime. There's the war, 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 war.
yeah. Well, I mean, the fleet just kind of feels sterile. It's like going to some exotic location and then spending most of your days in the dentist's office. I mean, it's just kind of you got this great galaxy that you could be hanging out in. I mean, even the starter worlds. I mean, I think if you were, the central hubs they made, Dromund Kaas and Coruscant. I mean, it would just feel a little bit better because you got like, for the Imperials, you got this lightning sky and this big, kind of city to kind of run around with. I mean, they might have wanted to stick with the fleet because technically you got the flashpoints and then the shuttles to the Korriban and Hutta and the other factions starter planet. So I mean, that's kind of why they might have wanted to stuck with that. But I mean, they could easily say, here's a shuttle that just takes you to this planet, or you go to the space dock
Hmm.
on the starter worlds and be able to access it almost the same way. And with the advent of or the introduction of player housing, that could be what they want to do is
I
get
was
us
just
back
going to
to
bring that
the
up. Yeah.
yeah.
Because obviously there's going to have to be a centralized general for for being in housing that's going to be linked up to, say, fleet. So that actually kind of opens up the ability to get off fleet. And do you think you, I kind of think they realized what they did with the fleet was wrong. It doesn't feel like a city. It doesn't feel like a hub. It feels like I run around in circles because that's the easiest way to find, even to find what I need is just to run circles until I get to that point. And then a lot of the times I find myself even talking in vent with everybody and I'm just running circles around fleet because it's like a giant uh, track, like a track field.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially as they got you, if you need to go augment something, you go, most people go buy it from the GTN, and you got to go over there. So I mean, again, the layout and the idea of the fleet having everything kind of close in proximity is a good idea. It's just again, they could technically move them over and just say the fleets were destroyed. And I mean, I think it's something the community's been saying for a long time. I've heard other podcasts say it. I've heard it said on the forums. I've seen it on Reddit. So
Right.
the ships could be their answer to it. To let's get player housing and put it back to the at least not the starter worlds, but the semi starter planets. And then that would just give the interaction with the high level players to the low level players, because there's never really been a good reason to go back to those other planets for high levels, except for they've added some of the seeker droid quest and the bounty hunter contract.
Hmm.
What's good to some people out there every so often, but why not have the majority of them there on the same planets? They can sit there and answer questions, or they can sit there and see all the Java related movie jokes as well.
Which I'm happy to see has moved from general chat on the fleet out to the starter planets.
I don't know. On the Bastion server, I saw it 2 or 3 weeks ago on the fleet.
Yeah, every now and then.
At least like 10 different people. Yeah, every now and again you get those. It's generally when you got the spikes of the when GSF launched and you got a bunch of new people coming back. I think you get those type of people where it just fuels it. But
And so, before we move on to another maybe negative one, I mean, what do you see that they've done correctly? I mean, for me, um, I think we talked beforehand about Corellia. I feel the fact that it's a war-torn sort of planet that everybody wants to have. I think is because it's in the middle. It's got vantage points of that's probably why they made it one of the last battles in vanilla SWTOR. Um, I like the fact that it kind of leads up to the resentment Corellia seems to have in the extended universe that we read from after the Battle of Yavin.
yeah, Corellia's always been this kind of rich planet that people have always seen as a resource they could take advantage of. So I mean that's kind of what we see it in their current lore in Star Wars right now. That's its war ravaged planet, and it fits that layout. I think you walk around and like you said, you see ships crash through buildings and flaming wreckage,
Yeah.
and the Datacron theirs are actually pretty fun too. If you've never done them.
Yeah, no, man, those are the best. Some of the ones where you launch yourself across one torn up building to another, or where you climb up a building using the sort of shrapnel that's dropped from space, and then you do circles around the building, try to climb up the building, and then you end up above everyone else. I think so, those are probably some of the most enjoyable datacrons to go hunt.
Yeah, especially the aim one. You have to stand on this little pillar thing and get raised to the platform,
Yep,
which is a pain in the ass because it's like every couple of minutes. But the fun part is you have to click this barrel, which basically blows you up, and you have to shoot back to the Datacron.
yep, and it's really easy to. Well, I guess it's if you know what you're doing, it's easy to get. But I've seen a lot of people just waste their time, get up there, then launch themselves into the opposite wall and go fall into the ground. And if there was a look of despair to be had, it would be on the face of those players. So Corellia was done good, and I know you enjoy Coruscant, correct? Or I think we were having a debate earlier about Coruscant. I don't feel like Coruscant was done very well, but you were talking about, well, it's just one spot of Coruscant. And so my to get into it a little bit, my problem with Coruscant was I felt that I don't feel like thousands of stories up in the air like you should on Coruscant. And I also don't feel like we go far enough down to get into some of the more meaty parts of Coruscant, which is the slums, which in the extended universe are very well, seedy to say the least.
Yeah, so I mean, Coruscant again, it's it's where you're basically located in the starter planet. At least to me, it seems like it's a small subset of the actual planet itself. So, even though you technically there's some slums in the the area you're going into, you're kind of in the high class slums. So you're not really seeing any of the
The high
the
class.
places that would burn down. Yeah, exactly. So you're not really seeing like beggars running around and just complete filth. I mean, I think you're still seeing a part that might still be patrolled, pretty regularly. Because again, it's going to be in case some senator or someone wanders, a bit far from the Senate building. They don't want, complete slum or that type of stuff. So I think you're seeing like again more of the censored, cleaned up slums. Essentially, we don't get access to that. Real deviant area that's just complete murky where you can get to go buy some spice.
Is that why the slums of Nar Shaddaa are? I feel like they just put up a bunch of metal, like racks, and then uh, neatly put up the trash onto these racks instead of it being laid out around places. I th- I feel like those are very upscale slums because they decided to, well, we're not going to get rid of the trash, but we're going to neatly pile it up on racks, like I would in my garage.
I feel well. Two things. Nar Shaddaa does actually give you a bit more of that feel. It's supposed to be kind of the equivalent to Coruscant, where it's this planet for, been built on top for generations on top of generations, and you can't even see the ground anymore. So, and Nar Shaddaa actually does give a little better of that feel. I think when you're flying through the speeders, you actually feel like you're towered by all these buildings and get to see all this crazy speeder traffic just
It's
going
always
around.
night. I think that helps. The fact that it's always night, it gives it a seedier sort of look. And I think some of the that might have helped Coruscant a little bit if they would have made it feel a little bit so like the light doesn't even reach down here, which I
Well, again,
don't know if they did that very well.
you're in that open Senate area, so for
Well,
most of the part,
no.
or you're kind of in that surrounding that close proximity. So
At times you
even
end
though you
up
might,
down there. Oh, but you're saying because it's so close to Senate that it's a little bit more.
yeah, and you're only going down like 10 levels. If you went down 100 levels, let's say, or then it might be a lot more seedy or dark. Kind of like that feel of Nar Shaddaa. But back to Nar Shaddaa, I think the whole point of that planet is to make you travel as long as possible to waste as much time. I mean, their whole point of it, they just have these long corridors, so they probably had to skip on a little bit of detail, just trying to fill the corridors with just some random info or some random NPCs, and just because anywhere you travel is just mob after mob, and I mean it's not too bad when you got a stealth class, but most of them are just go all the way over here now, all the way back over here. Now you got to go back this way, and nope, there's not going to be a quick travel spot for you. So
So, in your mind, what planets did it correct? What planets, bring out Star Wars, the feel of Star Wars the best, in your opinion?
well, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a loaded question just because we're used to being Star Wars of these set planets that we see. If you watch Clone Wars or stuff like that, you see these different vibrant planets that are different depending on their location. So I mean, Voss, I think they did a good job on that as far as it kind of
That would have been my number
being
one
that.
pick. I felt like Voss was very Star. Now, if it is it your favorite? No, but does it exude Star Wars? And I would say yes.
Um, Taurus, if you know, that's the whole green lava planet.
I do feel like they did Taurus very well.
Yeah, most people hate that. Just because again, it's one of those planets where you got to travel a bunch, and most people didn't have a speeder starting at that point, so it was a bit more of a pain in the ass for travel. But I mean, there's just some great parts of that planet that I've taken some screenshots on, or just had some a couple of fights where in the past, my old guildies just went and, it just looks like some epic battles, fighting with some lava around you, and or the green, whatever it is, the green poison sludge.
Yeah, no, I think Taurus was done very well. Though I will say it is obviously a section of the planet that we did not get to see in KOTOR, because the way I imagine Taurus is that it was it was very built, you know. There was a lot of stuff there. And then like I just don't feel as if the building rubble shows enough to say this is close to the area as before. But obviously it's a huge planet. Why take us back to the one place? Except for, as SWTOR Miner announced last week, after these current flashpoints, we're going to be going back to Manon to the underground or the underwater facility. So they are sort of taking us back in that sense to a place that we have seen before.
Oh yeah, well that reminds me that the other ones are flashpoints that are coming out are the Korriban and Drome and Koss one. So I wonder again if that's going to be another reason to move the locations of the central hubs essentially to those starter planets.
I would like to see PvP matches that take place on those planets now to sort of play into the lore a little bit. I think if they did something like that where you have to take a certain point and hold it on that planet, um, or maybe you could run resources and we could do a more of a capture the flag sort of thing where you have to run resources from their base to your base that you've set up on that planet. I think something like that for the PvP side would be a lot of fun, and it would play into the sort of the Star Wars sort of lore. You're taking small teams and infiltrating their base and bringing out resources that you can use at your base. I think that feels very Star Warsy, and you know, add some lightsabers to it. Obviously, it is.
So with the one ancient Hypergates Warzone, they kind of did that whole point system where you're collecting those little orbs in the beginning. I would have liked it better if you didn't have the nodes to capture. Those are just your pre-assigned bases, and you can get as much points for killing. Maybe if there was more of those nodes spread around that you had to farm. I think that would have been a better implementation of it. Less focused around killing and more about the gathering of the orbs, and that way you just wouldn't want to die because then you wouldn't be able to collect as many orbs.
Right. I don't know, understand why they're fighting this whole idea where, like a capture the flag sort of go into their base and bring it back sort of idea. I do think that that is something that is inherently Star Wars, like I said before, running into their base, getting their stuff and making it back to your base without dying, I think is very inherently Star Wars. It's sort of like some of the missions that are given to the Jedi, with help through the forces that have their back. And so I would like to see something, and maybe they're just saving it. I don't know why they're doing it. I don't like the middle ground sort of thing. I think maybe that's their way of saying fight here, then take it away. But doing something where it's a little bit more of an open map, and then moving, and then going into a base, and then bringing that resources out, I think it would help out their PvP in this game. I think it's just a map a lot of people want to see. A little bit of terrain to
I mean,
sort of LOS as you're running.
yeah, that would be good. I mean, I think the Hutball map was a great implementation. I just think we're all tired of playing the old one, so I think we're all looking forward to the new one. And I think
Right.
that was had a great Star Wars feel to it. It was a little bit, like an actual sport that we're all used to, but the twist on it, with the whole huts and like killing your opponents as they're
Right.
trying to cross the line. So
I agree. I think it was done very well, and that it did have a very nice Star Wars feel to it, like a death match, something that Huts would definitely set up to watch the sentience do, you know.
And then Void Star, I guess they kind of went that route as well. It was kind of like a capture flag where you just had to penetrate their base to get their node. So you just didn't have to run out essentially. But just depending on what team compositions they have, it could just make those matches a complete stalemate. So again, I think that's where some people's frustration with that one is. But that's got to be my favorite of the war zones, I think.
Void Star is very Star Warsy, that ship that was lost and both sides need it to win the war. So they're going out to sort of find it, and oh no, we both got here at the same time. We got to fight it out. I feel like that is, very something that, I could read about this battle in the extended universe.
And I guess I would have to say, on the opposite end, one of the planets that don't feel Star Wars to me, it would kind of have to say McKeb a bit. That just seems a bit more with the whole floating planets and islands. I mean, I know they kind of explained it with all the whole, gravity things falling apart, but that just still made me feel like an actual fantasy or something. Like WoW or some other type of game like that.
Right. It just a planet for me that did not feel very. I hate to. I feel so like kiddie saying Star Warsy. Um, but I'm not a huge fan of Coruscant. Sorry, I don't think they lived up to what Coruscant was. I think that Coruscant felt more like uh, it felt more like what Taurus was in KOTOR. It did not feel what I would imagine uh, Coruscant would actually be. It does not feel very Star Warsy to me. Now, to end, if you had to choose something for them to change, the biggest thing to bring Star Wars: The Old Republic into the Star Wars universe, what would it be for you, Big?
So to make it
Just to
more
bring
Star
it sort
Wars.
of to make it feel, for lack of a better word, a little bit more Star Warsy.
I think the storyline. I mean, I think there's enough gear where you can get your type of Star Wars look. You're kind of going for the most part. I mean, I think except for some traditional Jedi robes, which I think they said are coming soon. But again, traditional Jedi robes are future Jedi robes, so
Right.
they technically don't exist around this time frame. So I mean, I think for me it'd probably just be the story and the lore. That hasn't really felt too much Star Wars for me with the whole fighting like Huts and gangsters and that type of stuff. I mean, some of the lore flashpoints we've talked about in the past, we get the free Revan and those type of ones, like well, again, just some of the lower ones in general. But so that's what I have to say is the actual story overall. I mean, I think where they're going with this in the future, without giving any spoilers, I think they'll probably be able to land it home for me and give it that Star Wars feel.
Yeah, with especially what we're seeing with sort of the corruption within the Jedi, not to give away, anything, but like we're starting to see some corruption, we're starting to see some lies, and I think that this is where we start to see the Empire sort of doing what they do best and capitalizing on the dark side of everybody around them.
I mean, that's the two things that, well, the first thing got me hooked to the game is just the story and Star Wars itself, and then the new guild and just hanging around with you guys. So I mean, which again, I just think they've kind of dried up on the Star Wars feel of it. I mean, McCabe, they were kind of fighting over that, but again, it didn't give that true Star Wars type feeling. I mean, the new Flashpoints do kind of give with the story point a little bit, kind of give that feel. So again, I
Right.
think they're starting to go in that direction. That will work for me.
So if I had to say anything, I would say it would be a two-part. One, take us off of the fleet. Two, allow us to infiltrate each other's homeworlds. And I feel like that would be where you could you could bring in a lot of world PvP, where also uh, you also get to go in and maybe try to infiltrate the leaders. I think that would be a lot of fun, and I think it would feel a lot of It would feel like Star Wars to me. It would feel like something a rogue group would try to go and do. You know,
I mean, like go and take out some of
some of their
their
leaders.
champions at their base, and
Yeah, yeah. I think that
yeah, that would
that
be.
could be a lot of fun, and I think that it would could bring us into this whole Star Wars, another sort of feel into Star Wars, taking a 40 or a 20 to 40 man group into a city and ransacking it, and they're all bounty hunters. I could see that could be something that some bounty hunters would do, sort of, try to take it over, which you can do now in some of the smaller areas, but having a big sort of target I think would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean that because there's never really been any ramifications for taking out uh, another faction's base guards. I mean, especially at the current level 55 cap, they're a bit of a challenge of trying to take them all on at once. So it would be nice if if you're able to kill all the 20 champions, and then a certain boss would spawn that a certain elite one on theirs, and
Right. He gets
then if you
pissed
kill
off,
one,
so he
he gets
comes
some sort
out.
of yeah, and that would then spawn it, and again, that way the opposite faction could say, hey, they're trying to get this, so come and let's defend our base. And
Well, all right. I think we've sort of talked it out, and we've seen some good and some bad that Star Wars: The Old Republic has done, and obviously, not everything that gets done is going to live up um, to the fans. But I think one thing that we should say, we did this as sort of a fun thing to sort of see what we as fans would like to see. But I think BioWare's done a phenomenal job bringing this game in. People can say not sandbox all they want, but the story is what keeps people coming back for more. Wouldn't you say, Big?
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this game can be a one-player game if you just want to sit there and play every single class story. I mean, you can
Right.
get a good, few months out of that as well too. So I mean, that's like I said, one thing that's made this game I think so popular is the story. And again, I mean, they went off with a story that I don't totally agree with. And again, but I think they're coming back. Bringing it back
They're
down.
finding their roots, and I think we're all going to enjoy the upcoming content. And so just remember, if you guys are doing PvP, if it's red, it's dead. On the PvE side, stay out of red circles, people. And all you guys do in GSF, keep blowing each other up. Have a great time. A lot of content. We'll be back next week with more of Enmity Podcast. Have a great week.